Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you all. So today I've got more Bystial Sprite Synchro for you all. I have been continuing to work on this deck since the MCS Invitational, and this has kind of become my pet deck that I'm climbing towards Master Rank with. I have been sitting at Diamond 5 for a little bit, just playing various decks in order to, get more videos out, more content out, and when I decided to sit down and be like, okay, what am I actually going to try to do my climb with? I decided to land back on Bystial Sprite Synchro, of course, as I mentioned the last time I featured the deck. This is probably just my favorite deck in Master Duel right now, and obviously for that reason I've been continuing to tinker with it. And right now I'm at Diamond 3, so I'm in Diamond 3 and 2 wins. I think so I'm actually literally halfway through the climb from Diamond 5 to Master. And again, I would like to do it entirely with this deck. We'll see if I end up throwing in something else, but for the most part it is going to be mostly just this deck. This is still very similar to the list that I took the MCS Invitational, but there are a couple of very notable changes that I've made recently here. Particularly to the main deck, you might notice that Deep Sea Divas are out, and in their place I am playing 3 copies of Blackwing Sharnga the Waning Moon. Now, it might seem weird to have a random Blackwing monster here without any of the rest of them, but, well, to be fair, this is already kind of a mishmash of various archetypes, right? We've got the Bystials, more or less out in full force here, as well as the Sprites here, also more or less out in full force here now as well. So what Sharnga offers that Diva doesn't? Well, let's talk about what Diva did right for the deck, right? Deep Sea Diva does provide 2 level 2 bodies, one of which is a tuner, one of which is not a tuner. That's actually very important for this deck. There's a card, I talked about it before, in the TCG and OCG that's not out in Master Duel yet, called a Ringo Worm, the 100 Golden Apple, I think, or something like that. That card's actually literally just what this deck needs. It's a light monster that is a level 2 tuner, and it summons a token that can either be used as a tuner or not. So I kind of went to Diva to kind of like use as a surrogate, but Diva's got quite a few things that it doesn't really work well with the rest of this deck with. First of all, mainly that's water. This deck really cares about monsters being light or dark, not only for Chaos Ruler, but also the Bystials. It would really suck to open Diva plus a Bystial, because that's not actually plays beyond just like a Sprite line, so that would feel bad. On top of that, there's the fact that Diva has to be normal summoned in order to get her effect. That's not a huge deal, because this deck actually does not have normal summons aside from Diva. So in this current build, we don't have any dedicated normal summons at all, which is actually very nice. But the fact that you have to normal summon it, you can't even bring it back with like a Spright Elf or something, does really hurt the card, honestly. And 3, and honestly the biggest reason, is that Diva is like the biggest negation bait I've ever, it's like Rescue Cat, right? It not only eats your normal summon, but then it's vulnerable to like every disruption under the sun. Ash Blossom, Imperm, Maxx's a really good chain against it in particular. Gamma, it's an on-field effect, so it'll trigger Haveness, there's just so many different disruption effects that will all trigger off that Diva. Not only trigger off the Diva, but then also make your plays a lot more awkward as a result. So, Blackwing Sharnga. Now, this one does not offer multiple level 2 bodies like Diva does, but it can summon itself from the hand. You just have to have a monster with 2,000 or more attack, which is not difficult in this deck, considering we have both Chaos Ruler and the Bystial monsters that this will often pair with. So, kind of like Assault Synchron, this a lot of the time ends up being just a free level 2 tuner. You can just special from your hand, which is very, very good. And the second effect is actually relevant here. If we have a Blackwing Synchro monster on the field, this is quick destruction. It is targeted destruction, but it's still quick effect disruption from your graveyard during your opponent's turn, which is very nice. Now, as far as the Blackwing Synchro monster we're playing, that's going to be our full Armor Master, the Royal 4 Armor Master we were all given. Oh, and then for those who aren't aware, Sharngas, if you want to try them, they are ultras, but you can't craft them. They come in the Blackwing structure deck, so I just picked up 3 of them to put this in. But full Armor Master, yeah, we're trying out a copy of this as well. The only requirement to summon this that's archetype specific is that you need a Blackwing tuner, and we're already playing Sharnga, and 2 plus 8 is 10, so Sharnga plus Chaos Ruler equals a full Armor Master. This card is very powerful because it's got decent stats. The stats are actually kind of the worst thing about it. This card is unaffected by any other card effects, but 3k attack and defense in this meta is actually not that difficult to battle over for most decks, so It does have a little bit of weakness in that regard, but if the fact that you have 3k attack and defense is your biggest weakness as a card, I'd say you're a pretty good card. Of course, Full Army Master can also distribute wedge counters and then either destroy everything with a wedge counter or take control of stuff. Those effects don't really ever come up, to be totally honest. We're mostly just using this as a towers that can also offer, in the form of Sharnga, a quick effect destruction during the opponent's turn there. Other slight changes that we have made to the main deck here. We have Imperms back in, only 2 this time, but we do have a couple of Imperms in. I would like to be playing 3 still, but as always as ever, you know, we're tight on space for this deck. Prosperity's back in, and I have also bumped up to 3 copies of Spright Jet and Saronir. I believe we're only on 2 of each, but having as many extenders as possible is extremely important for this deck. As far as what's out, Thunder Dragon Colossus and the Nemeses Corridor are out. They're definitely not bad in this deck, but they ultimately do end up being just a little bit win more. They're not really part of your native combos, and a lot of the time, you really do just need the Caligo Claw Crow in order to continue making plays there. Oh, I've had a lot of people ask me whenever I feature this deck, like, why aren't you playing one of the branded continuous spell or trap cards for Lubellion? A lot of people have been asking why no branded regained. There's a couple of reasons. The main reason actually to not play branded regained in this deck is that it actually doesn't come up as often as you think it would in terms of drawing cards. Because when we were summoning Bystial Lubellion, that's going to be at a point in the combo when we've already had our Chaos Ruler summon itself back, because the idea is that we use Bystial Lubellion to tribute our Chaos Ruler that will banish itself because it brought itself back. Then Assault Synchron brings the Chaos Ruler back, and then you also have the Bystial Lubellion. At that point in the combo, you've already banished to summon back your Chaos Ruler, so you're probably not going to be doing much banishing at all for the rest of the turn, unless you happen to have an extra Bystial in hand, which is like not super likely. Honestly, at that point, you've probably already summoned your Bystial for your combo. So yeah, it's like you're not really going to ever draw combos with it, or draw cards with branded regained naturally. The ability to summon back Bystials is honestly the more tempting part of that effect, but at the same time, like, we don't always include Bystials in our combo lines, and I just don't like having bricks, especially in a deck like this, but even generally speaking, I don't like playing bricks if I can avoid it, and Branded Regained would just be a brick, honestly. Same with Branded Beast as well, the trap card that destroys by sacking a dragon. We don't even really often have leftover dragons. Usually everything that's on our end board is like a negation or a disruption, because that's what this deck is focused on doing, is just turboing out a whole bunch of those, so yeah, on paper, it might seem like, why would you not have a branded either Regained or Beast in your deck for the Bystial Lubellion? But again, in practice, it's just not really, it doesn't come up, it's a bit dead, and it's definitely win more even when it does come up and it's not dead, so. The extra deck, as I said, Thunder Dragon Colossus is out. I believe the other major change here is that I decided to throw in an Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, which I have very much enjoyed in this extra deck. One thing I've been debating kind of a little bit ever since I really started playing this deck is how much of an IP package I want, right? Like, I'm playing IP Masquerena, Knightmare Unicorn, and Avermax. It's pretty rare, though, to even summon... I don't know if it's rare to summon IP, but it's uncommon to summon IP in this deck, but it does still come up just often enough that I do think that having all these extra deck slots is worth it. Although I will say that I would still be playing Underworld Goddess regardless of whether or not I was playing IP, because most of the time this has come up for me so far, I haven't even had IP on the field. It's just been used to remove like a Towers monster my opponent has during my turn. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this current iteration. I am feeling very good about it. I like this build a lot more than the previous one, and I am going to, as I said before, try to take it all the way up to Master if possible. But let's go ahead and break the list down card by card, and then I'll show you some gameplay. So we're on 3 Maxx, 3 Blackwing Sharnga, the Waning Moon, 1 Caligo Claw Crow, 1 Shinobi Necro, 2 Spright Blue, 3 Spright Jet, 1 Spright Red, 1 Spright Carrot, 3 Assault Synchron, 3 Ash Blossom and a Joyous Spring, 1 Bystial Magnamhut, 3 Bystial Saronir, 1 Bystial Druiswarm, 1 Bystial Baldrake, 3 the Bystial Lubellion, 3 Tuning, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Spright Starter, and then 2 Infinite Impermanence. There's our main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Cupid Pitch, 1 Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, 1 Accel Synchro Stardust Dragon, 1 Blackwing Full Armor Master, 1 Baronne de Fluer, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Cheng-Ying, 1 Gigatic Spright, 1 number 38 Hope Harbinger Titanic Galaxy, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Spright Elf, 1 Spright Sprind, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusader Avermax, and then 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. And that's going to do it for our deck. Now let's move on to some gameplay. Alright, so this first game we're up against Therion ABC, but I'm mostly just showing this game to show you what a combo line that actually summons out the Blackwing Full Armor Master looks like. To be fair, it's actually relatively uncommon that I summon the Armor Master, but sometimes the combo line allows for it. Also just want to show off, a hand like this at a glance doesn't seem like there's a whole lot you can do with it, but Tuning and Bystial Lubellion, like these two cards are far more than enough by themselves to make plays. We can even make use of the extra Maxx here, you'll see in a moment. I'm going to use Tuning to add Assault Synchron, end up milling another Tuning. Usually you want to hit a light or a dark monster, but if we don't, it's also not a big deal. Going to send Lubellion to add a Saronir, and then banish the Lubellion to summon the Saronir. I actually want to be summoning the Bystials first. If you're comboing with this deck, you want to summon Bystial monsters before you control anything, just in case your opponent is holding Bystials themselves. That's actually very important. Like, if our opponent had a Bystial monster and we just special Assault Synchron, they could have used the Bystial to banish our Lubellion, and then we would have been screwed. We wouldn't have been able to summon the Saronir at all. So that's actually very important when you're playing this deck. Make sure that you're summoning Bystials, if possible, while you don't have anything on the field, so that way they don't get disrupted by your opponent's Bystials. So now we're going to special the Assault Synchron, and normal the Maxx that looks a little bit weird, but we have an extra one anyway, and I can use this extra Maxx to go into a Cupid Pitch and set up a really good chain link here in a moment. Cupid Pitch will knock its level down to 2, so that way we can sync for 8 with the Chaos, or with the Bystial Saronir rather, for the Chaos Ruler. Now, Cupid Pitch will automatically make itself Chainlink 1, right? Chaos Ruler is going to make itself Chainlink 2. We get to choose a Chainlink at this point. So now we're going to choose to have Chaos Ruler as Chainlink 2, and now Saronir is Chainlink 3. So, to be fair, if our opponent had a Ash Blossom, they might have already thrown it out against the Tuning. But here, even if they do still have Ash Blossom now, we've chain blocked it, so the Saronir is the last effect on the chain link. Also, this is just a very awesome chain link to pull off. You get a lot of advantage here. Gonna bin another Lubellion. Chaos Ruler is gonna do some excavating. I already see a Spright Blue that I'm probably just gonna take, although we have plenty of options here. But I am just going to end up taking the Spright Blue. Yeah, another great thing about the Blackwing over, of course, the Diva is that you can actually excavate this. And also, you don't just have to go into a level 10 Synchro. This can also be used as a Caligo Claw Crow substitute as well. You can just special this because you don't have to Synchro while this is on the field. You can just special this while you control Chaos Ruler and then link them off for a Sprind. But here, we don't need to do that because we can just use Cupid Pitch to grab the Caligo Claw Crow, which I'm going to special as well as a Spright Blue as long as I have a level 2 monster out just to get a Jet for later. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to link the Crow and the Chaos Ruler to go for Spright Sprind rather than going for a level 10 Synchro. This is, of course, to send the Shinobi Necro from our deck to the graveyard. Now, Chaos Ruler will banish the Cupid Pitch and the Shinobi Necro to bring itself back, which will in turn trigger the Shinobi Necro effect to bring itself back to the field. Now I'm going to sync with it and the Chaos Ruler for 10, going for my Baronne de Fluer and establishing an Omni Negate. The Assault Synchron effect will then bring back my Chaos Ruler once again. And now I can special summon this Spright Jet, going to add a starter. Now here, just because it's in the graveyard and I have a good opportunity to do it, I'm going to link off the blue and the Jet for a Spright Elf, and then now I'm going to use that Spright Elf in order to bring back my Blackwing Shanga. Now I can sync that with the Chaos Ruler that I have here, and this is pretty much how you would turbo out a full Armor Master on turn 1 if you were interested in doing that. Now I get to use my Spright Starter. I got a Jet there. I should have gotten the Carrot out. Or no, actually, you know what? It was right to do the Jet, not the Carrot, because the Jet didn't have anything to add anyway. So the Carrot we could potentially summon out later during the next turn. But we get to use the Gigantic Turbo out of red. And we even have a Maxx for our opponent. Though, as you can see, they have a call by, but mainly just wanted to pause here to show off that, like, yeah, we have an Omni Negate, we have a Monster Negate, we have a Bounce for a special summon, and not only do we have a Towers in the form of Full Armor Master that'll start distributing these wedge counters, but again, remember that the Shanga actually acts as disruption from the graveyard as well, being able to destroy a face-up monster, or face-up card, actually not even monster, card the opponent controls. So tossing out the Maxx during the draw phase, but the opponent's got a Called by the Grave for it. That's fine with me. I'm down to actually play Yu-Gi-Oh! We definitely have the board for it, so definitely don't need to worry about that. Not going to bother using the Baron on it. I have enough negation to stop whatever they're going to do. They're starting with an adventure line here, actually going to start with the Rite of Armistier, or grabbing that, then specialing the adventure token. But as soon as that comes down, I'm going to use Chandra's effect from my graveyard to just pop the token. It might have seemed better to have popped the Fateful Adventure, but my opponent could very easily have the Griffin Rider in their hand, and you know, in that case, I would much rather just get rid of the token. So they're going to special the Griffin Rider anyway, along with a B Buster Drake in order to link off for the Knightmare Cerberus. This is, of course, not only to use the Knightmare Cerberus' effect, but also trigger the B Buster Drake. I'm actually going to allow my Baron to get destroyed here. I'm going to use the Sprind, rather, to bounce the Knightmare Cerberus, and then I'll use Call By to banish the B Buster Drake. Now I get rid of my opponent's board, they don't get a search, and they have one card in hand to my Spright Red, even though, again, I do end up losing my Baron in this chain link. And the last card ends up being Therion King Regulus, which isn't going to do anything because I'll use Sprind, sacking the Gigantic to negate and destroy the Regulus. Now going into my opponent's turn, I have plenty of opportunities to make more plays, including still my full Armor Master. My Towers has been untouched. To my opponent's nothing, just a Fateful Adventure on the board there. So opponent's going to naturally concede at this point, and yeah, again, this combo line that turbos out a full Armor Master is not something you do every single game, but this game just happened to be a good setup for it, so I figured I would go ahead and show that off. We have more games to show off. Let's go into the next one here. Okay, this time we're going to be up against branded Bystial shenanigans here. Been running into a lot more of this. It's funny, you know, when I was recording for other decks, I was playing pretty much against purely Tier and Spright, but once I switched to this deck, definitely started seeing more branded Bystial. Going first again here, I'm going to start with a Pot of Prosperity. The three that I tend to banish off Prosperity are these three: Herald of the Arclight, Full Armor Master, and Knightmare Unicorn. These are the three extract monsters that on turn 1 I just find myself summoning the least often. I know it's weird probably to see me banishing the Full Armor Master after I just showed off a combo line that summons it, but again, it's actually pretty rare. Like, of all the games I played yesterday, from Diamond 5 to Diamond 3, which was like, I think definitely well over 30, I only summoned the Armor Master that one game that I showed there. So again, if you're wondering what to banish off of Prosperity, I recommend Herald of the Arclight, Full Armor Master, and Knightmare Unicorn. Again, those are just, generally speaking, the extra deck monsters I go into the least. So Prosperity is going to find us a Bystial Lubellion that will allow us to... This actually doesn't look like it, but this is actually a hand that can summon out Chaos Ruler and start doing some Synchro plays. I'm going to start by summoning a Magnamhut, specialing the Bystial, or the Caligo Clockcrow, following the Bystial Magnamhut, and then a Spright Blue. Blue will grab and then summon Red. I already have the Jet, and I can use this Red for some protection if need be. Gonna then link for a Spright Sprind. A Sprind will send the Shinobi Necro, and I still have a Bystial Saronir in my hand, so I can use that to banish the Shinobi Necro, summon itself back. I'm gonna sync the Shinobi Necro with my extra Spright Blue to make a Cupid Pitch, and now, as you can see, we're setting up that same sweet chain link that we saw in the first duel, where we're gonna do Cupid Pitch Chain Link 1, Chaos Ruler Chain Link 2, Saronir Chain Link 3. So, again, I think if our opponent had Ash Blossom, they'd already have it, but this particular chain link does still play it very well into an Ash Blossom there. So, Saronir, of course, will bin a Lubellion. Chaos Ruler, let's see what we end up finding here. We find an Assault Synchron, so that's extremely good. Also, another Blackwing Sharnga there, but... So I grabbed the Assault Synchron, but actually technically should have grabbed the Blackwing Sharnga. In this scenario, both can special themselves from the hand, but in this case, Sharnga just doesn't deal me damage or lock me into Synchros while it's in play. I'm just so used to, like, you know, when it comes to Chaos War, it's like, see an Assault Synchron, grab an Assault Synchron. But I will say, in this scenario, Sharnga actually would have been the very slightly better ad. It's not going to ultimately end up mattering, though, so... And then, of course, Cupid Pitch will not actually be grabbing anything because we already started off with the Caligo Clockcrow as part of this combo line, and we don't have any other targets for it. Alright, so Chaos Ruler is going to bring itself back, banishing Spright Blue and Cupid Pitch, because again, Shinobi Necro has already been banished. Now I can sack off the Chaos Ruler to bring back the Bystial Lubellion, and this is what I was talking about when I said this is why I don't play Branded Regained here, right? Because this is the type of scenario in which you summon Bystial Lubellion, but again, I've already summoned all the Bystials I had, and I've already used Chaos Ruler's effect. I'm not going to be doing any more banishing this turn, so for that reason I don't get to actually draw a card, even if I were able to play the Branded Regained from my deck. There is the argument, of course, still, that I could be summoning the Bystial monsters out of my graveyard during my opponent's turn, but I think that's a little bit win more. It's not even guaranteed that you're going to have Bystial monsters in your grave to summon necessarily, so yeah, for that reason I tend to just not really go for it that often. Or, I mean, play it at all, not even just go for it often. I think I might have tested it, like, in my very first draft of this deck, but then pretty quickly found it wasn't that great. So, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good turn 1 setup, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 negates, as well as a bounce with the Sprind, and we even have a Bystial Baldrake once our zones start opening up with the red and the carrot here. So, this is a pretty typical end board, turn 1 for this deck, and definitely one that we very much like to be seeing here. Alright, opponent's going to start off with a branded opening. They're going to summon the Alibur Jester of Despia, following that up by searching a branded regained. You might have noticed that, like, I'm just allowing all these effects to activate here. I'm not actually using any of my disruption. That's because my opponent's not really doing anything threatening at all. Like, yeah, they can use this strategy to add another Alibur. They've already used Alibur's effect this turn. That's fine. They end up normaling the Ecclesia and then a Cartesia before moving to battle phase. But I don't think they're aware that not only does Titanic Hope Harbinger have an effect that forces you to battle with it, 1, but 2, that effect is not once per turn, and 3, on top of that, it actually doesn't need Xyz materials to negate and attach spell cards. So, like, my opponent achieved literally nothing except dealing themselves 3,000 damage during that battle phase. It's pretty clear they wanted to run over my Elf and my Sprind before they started trying to make plays, but unfortunately, reading doesn't end up being the bane of most Yu-Gi-Oh players, and had they read my Hope Harbinger just a little more closely, or, you know, read the entire bottom 2/3 of the card, then they would have noted that they would not have been able to do that. So, Branded Retribution is going to add them back a branded opening, which they're then going to set, from what I recall, and then concede. Yes. I feel like my opponent had a branded fusion in hand that they were constantly trying to bait me that whole turn into activating, but you might have noticed I didn't activate a single point of disruption at all. Like, I had those 4 negations and that bounce from Sprind, and I ended up using literally none of it before reducing my opponent down to just a couple of cards before they conceded. That is actually one important thing to know when you build a board like this. Sometimes I'll see opponents build a really scary board like this against me, but then, like, they just take every single bait that I throw at them, and then I have the 1 card combo left and they can't stop it. Knowing when to disrupt your opponent is very, very important if you're going to be building boards like this. In this game in particular, I just kept asking myself as they were playing cards, like, what does this actually do? Does this actually do anything that threatens me? And the answer was consistently no. No matter what my opponent did, they were not doing anything even remotely threatening to me. So, again, just did not feel the need to use up any of my disruption. But in any case, we have a couple more games to watch. Let's go into the next one here. Alright, so in this game here, we're going to be playing against Heroes. And this time around, we're actually going to be going second. So, no stupid crazy opening on turn 1 here, but we do still open a lot of disruption in this hand. In particular, we have Maxx Ash Blossom and 2 Bystial monsters. Gonna fire off Maxx during the draw phase, but my opponent's got an Ash Blossom, so yay, we get to actually play Yu-Gi-Oh here. Although with a going second hand like this, I don't know how much playing Yu-Gi-Oh my opponent's gonna be doing. They're going to start off with a hero lives. I'm naturally going to throw out an Ash Blossom, but I definitely suspect my opponent has more plays after this. That's one thing about heroes, although they do end up eating a lot of disruption with a lot of their lines. They are ultimately a very resilient deck. Opponent does actually have a follow-up in the form of Fusion Destiny with Melee and Denier. This would actually normally be very scary, but unfortunately for them, I have like the best possible counters for them. To be fair, I feel like it's generally just not a great time to be a hero player. It's funny, heroes went from actually, you know, wriggling their way not only up into tier 3, but possibly even tier 2 during the tier limit meta, like the pure tier 0 meta, which I do think it's pretty safe to say we're out of, but the introduction of Bystial monsters really just hurts heroes a lot. Like, as you can see, I hit both the Denier and the Mally out of the graveyard. To be fair, I opened stupidly good going second here. But yeah, the Bystial monsters just completely shut down anything my opponent was able to do beyond DPE, and we're definitely at a point in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where DPE is not nearly as impressive as it was when it first debuted. You know, when it first debuted, even a board of DPE alone was honestly enough to keep control of the game, but nowadays one single targeted destruction that is still fairly graveyard reliant for a dark monster is just like not enough, not even close to enough anymore. Gonna do a Prosperity once again here. Gonna banish the Herald, the Full Aura Master, and the Knightmare Unicorn. We end up finding a Spright. Oops, didn't need to hit fast forward. We end up finding a Spright Red, which doesn't look particularly impressive, but could have gotten us into a Spright line. Poet's going to wisely use a DPE to pop it though. That said, I'm still going to just battle with a couple of Bystial monsters before using my Baldrake to banish their Phoenix Enforcer out of the graveyard. Now they have literally 0 targets for it, and my opponent is in top deck mode, and yeah, they're just going to concede. So yeah, just an insane going second hand, and really just shows like how powerful the Bystials can be. I was gonna say against the right deck, but really we're just in the right metaphor. Like even beyond more rogue decks like Hero, right? You think about all the top decks like Tier Laments, Branded Bystial, Dragon Link, Spright to a slight extent also gets hurt by Bystials. Sometimes you can get whatever they're bringing back with Spright Elf. That's kind of rare, but a lot of the top decks are not only utilizing light and dark monsters, but even in a capacity where they want them in the graveyard very badly. And again, that doesn't count the plethora of rogue strategies that want the same thing. But we have one more game to show off. Let's go into it here. And this will be our final game against Tier Laments. Always wanted to try to sneak in a game against Tiers. Although this one, from what I remember, is like, we don't end up going into too many crazy combo lines. Well, you'll see. Actually, we might with this opening hand. It's definitely not too bad. Once again, we did open the Maxx. This time, our opponent's not going to have much of a response for it. Starting off with a two-limit Scream, followed by a Foolish Burial, sending the Agido. Normally, I'd be pretty nervous here, but the fact that I've already resolved a Maxx makes me much less anxious in this scenario. They did hit a Mudora, which could be potentially annoying, as well as this Crime that they're searching and the Rhino Heart that's coming back here. As far as stuff in our graveyard, I mean, we do have an Assault Synchron in there, so that's not too bad, but I mean, obviously other than that, this deck actually doesn't really like being milled all that much. Now, we do have this Bystial Magnamhut in hand, so we can use that against our opponent's Fuser. They're going to fire off their own Maxx, so a lot of action happening here. Although this is really confusing to me. They chain the Maxx, but then they chain the Mudora to then put back their Fuser so that I can't summon Magnamhut, but then they still don't get to fuse anyway. So opponent definitely wasted a point of interaction there. They could have either held the Maxx or the Mudora. I think in that scenario, it probably would have been better to hold the Maxx for my turn. If you look at my graveyard, like, it's pretty obvious. Like, even if you don't know exactly what my deck is, even though this mill actually does tell you exactly what my deck is, like, it's pretty obvious I'm up to some kind of shenanigans here. In this case, I would have held the Maxx in hand for my turn and used the Mudora to counter the Bystial Magnamhut here. But again, for whatever reason, my opponent just threw out both, you know, click yellow buttons and all that fun stuff. So they are still going to get to fuse here. They're going to end up sending a Merly from the deck to the graveyard and then fusing into a Kick Close that way. Thankfully, though, our Maxx draw is going to be the Ash Blossom, which I'm going to fire off on this Kick Close search. So now they don't get to grab Solic or like another extender, like a Fuser or something. I don't believe, yeah, they don't have anything in graveyard to summon with the Kick Close effect, which is nice. Albion's going to set up a Branded High Spirits in the graveyard before they pass back over to me. Now, they do have 2 back row, which could very easily be a Solic here. I drew my 3rd Bystial Lubellion, definitely like the worst possible top deck I could have gotten, but my hand overall is not bad. So, going to utilize the tuning here to grab Assault Synchron. We end up milling a Bystial Saronir, but I don't have any Bystial Lubellions left in my deck to send, so I'm not going to activate it. Going to summon under the Scream just to trigger it. Opponent's got a True Limit Shiren that they hit. I'm going to use the Magnamhut to counter it, and I guess my opponent's back rows didn't end up being that great because they're just going to immediately concede following that. Understandable though. I mean, at that point, I've got a live Baldrake on the field. They get a Magnamhut search. They know I have an Assault Synchron, so they know I'm going off in that regard. And I even have the Spright Starter in my hand to then, once I'm done doing Synchro stuff, then go into a Spright line. That should be far more than enough to find lethal there. Although, you know, against that board, I wouldn't have necessarily pushed for lethal. I would have just pushed to break the board. But either way, the victory was pretty much assured at that point. So, alright, that's going to go ahead and do it for these games. Thank you all for watching. Now let's move to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Accel. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.